Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Mortgage Coach educational event. Today's webinar, it is an honor to have Mr. Jerry Baker as our guest. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
I am here. Thank you for having me and for introducing me. I appreciate that.
All right. I'll give you a proper introduction in just 5 minutes. Just wanted to make sure we were ready to roll. My name is Dave Savage. I'm the CEO of Mortgage Coach, and for anybody who is new to our community on today's call, I welcome you to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and encourage you to connect with us for Mortgage Coach. A lot of events like this and other updates we're constantly posting in the Mortgage Coach community. Today's call, while it's about a number of things, if there was one theme that I'd really like to get through, it's about clarity. And, you know, when it comes to clarity, you need to have someone you really expect, really respect, give you that advice. So it really is an honor to have Mr. Jerry Baker. Many of you remember these companies, and regardless of your thoughts, these companies are two of the most legendary mortgage platforms in our history. Countrywide, First Horizon, when you think of the amount of loans they executed, you think of the scale of business, there's just no question two of the greatest companies in our industry. And Jerry was a senior executive at Countrywide and was the CEO and chairman of First Horizon. So Jerry, it really is an honor to have you join us here in the Mortgage Coach community now as a CEO coach and mentor at Building Champion. I'm sure you've seen a lot change over the years.
There has been a lot of change, and probably certainly more than we've ever seen in the last 3 or 4 years. Still a lot of opportunity out there, but certainly a lot of change.
Yeah, no doubt. So again, your past speaks for itself, and when you have the kind of topics that we're going to have today, having that kind of credibility in the past is important, but equally as important is what you're doing today. You know, I'm sure many of you recognize these logos. Jerry is a, I don't know if you describe it as a CEO mentor and mentor to the boards of these companies and a few others. So in today's market, he is still very active. While he is, for the most part, mentoring and managing CEOs and senior executives, his whole philosophy of leading from the trenches doesn't change. And by the way, Jerry, how have things changed just for you? Any comments on your perspective going from being the CEO operating a business to being an advisor and a coach to senior executives?
Well, it certainly has changed a lot in that I'm not directly responsible for the outcome, but the fun part is I work with some really talented people, very entrepreneurial, and as you said, I like to get in the trenches. Everything happens where people do the work, and so staying in touch with that and helping people navigate through all the chaos that we seem to see and sometimes ambiguity, it's just a lot of fun, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to say just how much opportunity there is in the mortgage business today. There's not a company that I work with that isn't having the best year they've ever had in their history. And if you just think back a few years ago, all the concern about we're going from a multiple trillion-dollar mortgage market to less than $1 trillion and so forth, there was a lot of concern about, gosh, will our business grow? And I think it's just testimony that if you stay focused on what you want to do and have goals and try to achieve or exceed those goals, you can be highly successful in any mortgage market. And it's not, I'm sure, just the folks I work with, that's for sure, but it's great times with great opportunity.
No doubt about it. And I'm going to mention Jerry's blog again towards the end of the call, but I think it's so important I wanted to mention it twice. For those of you that are listening, if you're not already following Jerry's blog, leadershipfromthetrenches.com, we'll have a link on our Facebook page after the call, so there's no excuse not to get it. But we're going to have a really unique opportunity over the next 40, 45, 50 minutes to hear his perspectives, to learn from him, but to keep learning, keep hearing from him. I highly encourage y'all to sign up for his blog at Leadership from the Trenches. Today's call, just to kind of set the stage, it's going to be, a bit unique. It's something I haven't done. I don't think Jerry has done anything exactly like this, but it's going to be an interview, but we're also going to interview around a really special book. It was actually a book that when I last spent some time face-to-face with Jerry at a roundtable, it was actually the Building Champions Roundtable, it was a book that he brought to the meeting, and had it at his side, had a lot of great things to say about it. I've since read the book about 3 to 4 times, and it's just a fantastic book for business leaders to gain clarity and focus around what we need to do to be successful. And again, success has a lot of definitions. In this book's definition of success, it's about building and running healthy organizations. They really make a distinction between smart, and I think smart could also mean profitable and successful, where leaders focus on strategy, marketing, finance, and technology. And the book is all about healthy, smart and healthy, where there's minimal politics, where there's high morale, high productivity, low turnover, minimal confusion as to what we're going to do. So it's going to be a little bit of an interview, a little bit of a book review. Jerry's job is going to be to speak directly to CEOs and senior executives of organizations that are on this call right now. And my job is going to be to translate that into the trenches to branch managers and loan officers with teams. So the way I see it, if you're a loan officer, you're a branch manager, you're from a smart perspective, you're focused on marketing / lead gen, selling / winning the business, production, closing the business, and let's face it, in this business we're always solving problems in the trenches. But when you think about it, that healthy, it's the same. Minimal politics, confusion, morale, turnover, and high productivity. It's the same. But I'm going to be, translating into the trenches. Jerry's going to be taking it from a very high level. So let's get the party and interview started here. Jerry, before we get into the book, what are 1 or 2 of the things CEOs as well as other senior executives need to be focused on in today's mortgage market as you see it?
Well, Dave, you talked a little bit, we talked a little bit about all the complexity and ambiguity that's going on in the business today. And so to me, whether you're a CEO of a company or an originator of loans, we really need to be focused on what our plan is and what our goals are, and stay balanced. It's easy to get upset about some of the stuff that's going on, but we need to be balanced and emotionally, and make sure that we're focused on our plan and getting things done relative to the plan. And perhaps in this age right now, this year, as it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it's really, in my view, sort of back to the basics. Do you have a vision for your business? Do you have a solid business plan? Does everybody know about that business plan? Is everybody on the same page? All of that stuff, to me, is extremely important today, especially in the face of all the ambiguity or the chaos or the change. You need to be really clear about where you're going. And to me, when you're clear about where you're going, some of the stuff around you becomes less important. It doesn't get in the way as much. Someone used to use a phrase today, for today's business, it applies, and that is, do things tight and right. You've got to be able to do things. Your execution has to be, I think, perfect today. And I would offer this, that whether you're an originator or the CEO of a company, there are some things that you need to be on the same page about and realize that they are important to you, and that are things like you need to build the net worth of your company. It needs to be financially strong. It's okay to take those profits and build net worth, because all the people you sell loans to are going to want to make sure you're financially solid. You want to make sure you're producing quality loans from app through funding. warehouses, resubmissions that clog up pipelines and so forth. So being really clear about what your process is and doing it right is important. Most companies today, or many do, want to sell to Fannie or Freddie directly or to Ginnie directly. And so whether you're selling to the big aggregators like a Wells Fargo or a Chase, or you're selling direct, you just need to make sure that you're doing everything right. If you start to retain loans, because there's a lot of that going on in the business, you still have to make sure you're doing everything absolutely right. Execution is critical. So, you know, there are some things, I think, Dave, that are important to focus on now. Clearly, it's not the easiest of businesses, but it's one filled with great opportunity.
A lot to think about, you know, in today's marketplace, no doubt about it. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, you know, there's a lot to think about, but, you know, I think that if you know your business and where you're going, you don't need to worry about competition. Just do what you're doing, what you think is right. Execute your plans very clearly, and I take comfort in always knowing that everyone is facing the same hurdles and the same competition and so forth. So it really comes down to how well you and your team are on the same page executing your plan. And if you stay focused on that, I think you're going to be very successful.
Well, I think this first question, I don't know if there's a whole lot of interpretation that I need to do down to a branch level, down to a loan officer with the team level. I think it's pretty clear. You know, you don't worry about your competition, you worry about yourself. At the end of the day, we are our own biggest competition. And the only thing I would say at the street level is be really sympathetic to your senior executives, you know, when they are, you know, requiring more paperwork, when they're changing things from a compliance standpoint. You need to make that your friend. You know, in this world, to be among the most successful companies, to be among the most successful originators, we need to, you know, the mindset of compliance is a hassle. That's not good thinking. Compliance needs to become a competitive advantage, and you need to figure out how to make it such. And management and leadership is not your enemy; they're your friends. So that would be about all I could say from a street level.
Dave, let me just add one thing to that, if I might, and that is that everybody in the organization really has to realize that if you're in a mortgage company, all you do is produce loans, produce good loans. And so, you know, if there are obstacles to getting loans done, figure out collectively how to get those resolved. The challenge is to find ways to make loans, and whether you're answering the phone in the corporate office, or you're a shipper, or a funder, or an underwriter, or someone helping a branch, a processor, your only business is to produce good quality loans. So everybody ought to be on the same page about that.
Absolutely. Again, we both know that's easier said than done, but that's what makes this business fun. So, you know, given a lot of the complexities and challenges in our industry today, you know, from your perspective, Patrick's book, The Advantage, provides guidance and benefits to mortgage lenders. How do you see that? You know, how does it provide that type of guidance?
Well, you know, I have to give you some full disclosure here. One of the things that I like most about Patrick's new book, The Advantage, is that it really represented everything that I have believed to be true in running a team or a department or a company. And so, you know, I think it's always good to read books about successful strategies, about business and so forth. But when we read those, sometimes we can agree with some of it, but not all of it. So in full disclosure, and I guess it's because it's just the way I have thought about for so many years, what's in The Advantage is what I believe to be absolutely true. And he has a statement in it which I'll quote. He says that organizational health will one day surpass all other disciplines in business as the greatest opportunity for improvement and competitive advantage. And I would just say that it has been my experience that companies are successful and teams are successful because of the people that you have on the team and in the company. And so if they support the company's goals, they all have the same value system, they enjoy working together, and they work together on executing your plan, then you're going to be extremely successful. So that's, in many ways, what this book, The Advantage, is all about. You know, I think all of his books have been parables of one kind or another, very interesting. This book, Patrick wrote about things he's observed in consulting with companies, over the years. So there's a lot of good stuff in it, and there's a lot of stuff in it that I just believe in wholeheartedly.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. Again, I don't have your your level of seniority in this space, but I know there's literally been dozens of books that I have read over the years, and this book just kind of summed it all up. It was all in one book, the best of, and just a great roadmap to success. Or whether you are an originator who is building a team around you, whether you're a branch manager that's got a mega branch, or you got a startup branch, and then obviously the book is written for senior executives and CEOs. So again, I can't say enough good things about it myself, or we wouldn't, so it brought us to this call. We really connected on it. So what are, from your perspective, what are some of the key takeaways or points that you took from the book?
Well, let me give a little quick overview about how the book is organized, and then I'll speak directly to what you asked, Dave. One is that he talks about you want to build a cohesive leadership team. You want to create clarity about your organization and where you're going, and your purpose and core convictions and so forth. You want to make sure you over-communicate that clarity, and we can get into that a little bit, but some of it is about making sure you hire the right people. When new people come onto your team, they understand what your company is all about. And then you need to continuously reinforce it. The things that you execute in your strategy need to be consistent with how you view your company and where you're going. So, I mean, that's sort of a broad schematic of it. But the key takeaway points, and one that I think is sort of interesting to me, and that is, first you have to build trust. The leadership team must trust one another. They must feel accountable to one another. And one of the ways that you get to that level of trust is to make sure you have a lot of discussion about what he calls in the book productive, unfiltered conflict. And I've always referred to that as dynamic tension, meaning it's okay for your team to have disagreements. And you need to have real and honest and in-depth conversations about what those disagreements are, because there's a kind of a thing that I've always believed, and that is that everybody will go on the same page if they're all on the same page with the facts and understanding everything. And most often, people aren't. So 95%, 99% of everybody on your team, from bottom to top, will always want to do the right thing. They need to have good information about it. And so one way to get good information about anything is to discuss disagreements, discuss differences, and not to follow suit with what the boss says, so to speak. And so maybe that is one of the most important things, is be honest and upfront about areas of disagreement so that you can work those through and then have a solid game plan when you go away from having a discussion about what you're going to do and be on the same page about it. So I think that's maybe one of the things that some companies find difficult to do. And when there's a point that's appropriate, Dave, I'll give you a little funny story about how that unfiltered conflict came into play with me once.
Good. Well, I really want to drill down on that. Any other takeaways or points from the book worth highlighting at this point?
Well, the thing that I say a lot, and it's in this book, and that is every organization has its culture. If you hire people that are not consistent with that culture, then you're probably not going to be successful. So making sure you're upfront with people you hire about what your company is all about and what you expect. When you find individuals in your company that may be a match for that or mismatch for that, you need to work on managing them out or managing them up so that they're all on the same page with where you're going. And to me, that if organizations can do that, they're just going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, makes lots of sense. Again, one of those things that are easier said than done, and I am really interested in hearing your perspective on this dynamic tension because it is such a difference maker, and it's one of those concepts that we know it, but it's tough. So, productive, unfiltered conflict, or as you put it, dynamic tension. It's interesting. So many times people want to avoid conflict, and by the way, we don't want to. We're geared to. And obviously different people have different levels of conflict avoidance, or there are some people that are just wired. They love conflict. They're creating conflict. But what's your experience been? And if you could tell your experience, and then also just speak a little bit to that manager that's really smart, doing a lot of things right, but if they had one thing they had to do better at, it was dealing with conflict in let's just call it a productive way. So I know that's two parts, and I'll make sure to hit the second part if you don't hit it. But let's go first round with just your experience.
Well, there was a lot of stuff there, so help me make sure I navigate through it. But the thing that we all, not all of us, but certainly I have, and many people on the call might have, is our personalities are such that we probably want to be directive, and we want to tell people this is what we want to have done, and so forth and so on. And so often we get to where we're spending 80% of our time talking and not enough listening. And so we need to make sure that we're spending time to listen to those on our team and be open to what those comments and those concerns and questions are. We probably have more information if we're running something or managing a team or running your business, or as an LO running your business. You know what you're doing, but others may not have the same degree of clarity. So making sure that issues are surfaced and you have a chance to discuss them in a calm and easy way, I think has a tremendous impact on getting everybody on the same page. It should be encouraged. You should welcome that, because the end result is far better than letting issues remain unsaid or fester over time. And I was going to tell you a story that sort of relates. It's funny to me in hindsight, although it wasn't funny maybe when it happened. As you mentioned, I work for Countrywide, so I work for Angelo, responsible for production and other things. And he was not very, giving guidance and that kind of thing. And the only time that really ever occurred was when you were relatively new in the organization and they had what they call the management assessment program, and you kind of put down the things that there was 25 questions. You rated them of what you were the strongest or less strong at, and you compared it to your boss. And so I go into the meeting with Angelo, and I sit down on the chair, and he pounds the table, and there's a few expletives, and he says, "Darn it, Jerry," wasn't darn it, but something like that, "I give you 5 things to do, and maybe you do one of them." And I'm thinking there, well, this is probably a short conversation. And there was a pause, and he says, "Thank you." He says, "I'm an emotional guy, and sometimes I say things that aren't right or I shouldn't say, so I appreciate you, ciphering or deciphering that and doing what's right." And it just reinforced on me a long time ago the importance of, no matter who you're working with, if you have disagreements or different points of view, don't be afraid to air them and discuss them. In my case, I was probably young enough and bold enough that I just went and did what I wanted to do anyway. But it did reinforce to me the importance of having those discussions, the importance of making sure that you're all on the same page. I think your boss will appreciate it, whomever you report to, and it's good for you. So, it was sort of one of those funny things that happened, with an industry icon that knew the mortgage business backward and forward, and I'm glad it worked out for me.
Great job. So again, be true to yourself, and if you always do what you think is right and you get things done, you'll come out on top, I think, is the moral I took to that story, although there's others. So besides building a cohesive leadership team and just the people piece, what are some of the other key themes that you think are notable and worth mentioning from the book in today's call?
Well, we kind of start at the beginning. You need to make sure that you have a team that's built on trust, that everyone knows what the other one's job is, their role, who's accountable, what they're accountable for, and so that's sort of the beginning thing. And then the next phase is to make sure that everybody knows the direction of the company, and that's sort of why are you in existence? Why do you exist? How are people to behave in the company or in your team? What do we want to happen? How will we succeed or be successful? Those are important questions. And then, of course, what are we going to do next, and make sure that they're prioritized. So getting everybody to be on the same page and move in the same direction is an ideal. May not happen 100% of the time, but it ought to be every manager, every leader's quest or desire to make that happen. And then what I said earlier, just make sure you have the right people on the bus. You're all on the same page, you share the same values, everybody understands goals. Goals are not just set by the CEO or the manager. Everybody in the organization should have their goals, should have their priorities. And then you coach people up to be able to achieve those and to be better. And then you just keep reinforcing it with clear communications. And one of the things I think Patrick says in the book is it takes at least 7 times of saying the same thing for people to understand it. So remember that you can't just do an email. You can't just stand up and say it one time. People have a lot going on in their lives, a lot going on in their work. And so you just need to continue to repeat those things that are important to you, where you're going as a company, reinforce it in all the actions that you take. Now, I said a lot there, but I think that everybody on the call gets all of that. It's just sometimes we get so busy and so distracted that we fail to do it consistently. And there's a business, a building champions phrase that we use a lot, and that is you need to find time not just to work in your business, but to work on your business. And so we often have our heads down trying to do all these things we're supposed to get done today, and we never lift up our heads to make sure we're going in the right direction, that everybody understands where we're going, that we see down the road far enough to anticipate and understand issues that are coming along that could be a problem for us or an opportunity for us. So I would say just make sure that you come up for air, that you work on your business, and have great clarity about what you're trying to do, and make sure everyone has that same clarity as well.
Nice. So again, translating to the originators, the branch managers, and again, we've all heard it more times than we can count. We say it to ourselves. but just how important it is to work on the business and not in the business. You are truly not a manager or a leader if your head's down and you're in crisis mode all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for folks in the trenches. It is to balance that time of where you're a doer and you're doing versus, hey, you're stepping back from the business and you're being strategic. So, I mean, it's, again, I'm sure I didn't teach you new ideas today, but hopefully you're getting more clarity because of who this advice is coming from. So here is the inside cover, the introduction to the book. And one of the things that really strikes me about this book, which I really loved so much, it says a lot, but it's really simple. I mean, it's got these 4 paradigms, build a great team, create clarity together as a team, reinforce clarity, over-communicate, or I did it out of order, over-communicate clarity, reinforce clarity. So again, simple, not easy, but I think that's what made this call for me so exciting is it really is a pretty simple message. It just bring it to the market, helping you guys get focused. So Jerry, another thing that's so critical to the overall execution, you get the great people, you get clear on the vision, but then just the meeting rhythms of a business. So a couple of questions I have around this. First, how different are the meeting rhythms you see in different companies that you lead? Are they all the same with just small subtleties, or are they vastly different? I'm just curious.
They're all different, I think. Depends, of course, on the size of the company, the dispersion of people within the senior organization. Some are centralized and some are decentralized, but so they're all different. But all that does then is put more responsibility on the communications that exist between senior members of the organization and then throughout the organization. This little schematic that you put up is a classic one, and it's a good one. And if it can be followed, that's marvelous. Being able to check in, even a few minutes about, what's your priority for the day, what's going on, and the various other levels that you had here. But it's very important to me, I believe, is that teams get together face-to-face and spend time working on their business. If you can do it as regularly as you can for an hour or two, that's fine. And then at least once a quarter, get together for a day or so of intense focus on how to make your business better. I certainly try to focus on that as a coach to CEOs, and we spend time doing that. And every time I do it, I see the value in it and the productivity that comes from that.
Right, right. And I can speak as an entrepreneur who's had a number of different companies of different sizes, and I look at there's been seasons of success and healthiness as it defines in this book, and I've gone through seasons of not as much success and unhealthiness, and having that meeting rhythm, as you described it, the quarterlies, the strategics, the dailies have always been hard for me. I mean, I've had different periods where we've done those right, and I've seen organizations that do it. I've seen successful organizations that don't, but I've never seen a successful organization that's healthy that's not doing their strategics and then working through those strategics on a weekly or bi-weekly level. That's a common thread of success as I've seen it in the marketplace. And again, for branch managers. Anything else on meetings or the importance of them before we move on?
I would only add one thing, is that meetings ought to have a desired end result. Something comes out of those meetings. There ought to be clarity about what those next tasks or next actions are, who's going to do it, when's it going to be done, and it gives you a roadmap then to hold people accountable, hold each other accountable, to make sure stuff gets done. So, meetings are not just to have meetings. Meetings are to have some definitive outcome as a result. And so just be really rigorous and taking good notes and knowing who's going to do what next, and then you have something to follow up on, make sure it happens.
Right on. So real quick, I want to do a quick poll for everybody. I want to find out, do you feel that you've got more clarity about what you need to do to build a healthy organization at this point in the call? Has this call, again, we still have some time, and I think we're going to have time for some questions. I've had a lot of questions come in, so we're going to open those up. Folks, you will need to raise your hand. I'm probably not going to pull questions out of the Q&A. So by the way, again, only about 30% of you have voted. Come on, give me let's get 70% of the audience on this call voting. Do we have more clarity? Jerry, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just said let's go for 100%. Come on.
For whatever reason, I never get that. But hey, you know what? I think we've made a difference. 91% say they have more clarity. So I'm feeling good about that. All right. So moving on, I want to make sure that everybody on this call is aware of some of the things that Building Champions doing. Jerry, feel free to jump in and add your commentary around it. But I know I will be attending this event September 18th through the 21st, Sun River, Oregon. Just a great opportunity to, in a very intentional way, with a great leadership team of mentors and coaches, reflect on what you've accomplished, to plan, what you want to accomplish going forward, and then to really connect with a unique group of people. I mean, the folks that attend these events, are everything from top CEOs, top executives, to top producers, and everybody shares this desire to be successful in a balanced way. So it really is a special event. I've attended it once. I'm looking forward to attending it again. I want to make sure we create some awareness around this. Anything you'd like to add to that, Jerry?
The only thing I would add is that we are going to do a breakfast breakout session for those in the mortgage business that we'll spend about an hour together, and we'll have conversation. I want to share some of Strathmore's recent trends, about the business, and talk about some of the things that I see going on in the industry, and just have good discussion about it. Just a value add, if you will, for the mortgage specific people that attend, and so I'm looking forward to that, and certainly looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible.
Okay, great. So again, a few more minutes. We're going to get into some Q&A. So if you do want to ask a question, it's time to start raising your hands and get ready to do that. First, I want to get a little tactical. I want to read a couple quotes, share some philosophies here from Mortgage Coach and some of our beliefs, and then we'll close out the call with probably a good 10 minutes of Q&A. So, here's a great quote from Jeff. I always pronounce his name wrong, but the CEO and leader of Amazon, who has a very unique perspective. But if you make your customers happy in the physical world, and really the way I see it is that's the old world, they might tell 6 friends. But in the new world, if you make a customer unhappy, he can tell 6,000 friends. So again, that power cuts both ways, and I think as leaders we need to understand that the world has changed. The opportunities on both sides of this sword cut differently. Service isn't doing what's expected. Service is doing more than what's expected. And Jerry, I don't know if you agree with this thinking or not, but I've always just felt that good service execution is, if it's not the greatest competitive differentiator, it's among the greatest differentiators in business execution.
Yeah, it should be you know, your service ought to be awesome. Everybody on your team ought to be trying to figure out how to wow the customer experience, and when you do that, and when it happens, the results are marvelous. I see a lot of that in the kind of the trenches stuff I see in the companies I coach with. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I mean, this is one of the things, and I do think, you know, at least when I talk to leadership teams, they're so busy with other tactics that are very important. I mean, whether it's preparing for the potential CFPB audits, preparing for other tactical things that are critical to success, but you've always got to have initiatives that are like, given our organization right now, what's the fastest and highest impact strategy to improve our service execution? You know, and this is just a question that I'm always bringing up in our organization, and I see successful companies do this. Again, I'm going to share some mortgage coach thoughts on this. This was actually some thinking I put together when I was doing the research to prepare for the Building Champions Roundtable. You know, it was first of all, thanks for inviting me to that, Jerry. But in preparation for that, it made me really think, if you're the CEO or you're a leader, how can you quickly and systematically improve your service execution? You know, can you do? Is it through people? Is it through training? You know, and I've always just been wired that people and training are important, but they're not quick fixes. You know, and you, at the end of the day, technology and the execution of technology in this market is a great differentiator. So when you think of this WOW platform, you know, think of it, you know, is it your marketing? You know, and I think every company that's listening to this call right now, you know, you have different opportunities, you have different strengths, and you have different weaknesses. So there's no one right answer for everybody. But, you know, what's your fastest path to better service execution? Is it your marketing? Is it your selling, how you win that business? Is it your back end? Because at the end of the day, if you're not executing on the back end, and by the way, Jerry, what is excellence in terms of back end execution in today's market from your perspective?
Well, my standard of belief is that you need to take an app and take it successfully through all processing, underwriting, and have docs to the closing agent a day in advance and fund it a day in advance so that you delight the customer to the expectation you set. And if you can do that, you're going to win all your battles, I believe.
Again, more clarity, guys, from an industry legend. So, and then there's step 4, which is loyalty, bringing them back into the circle. And when we think about it from a leadership perspective, there's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of options. And again, that represents opportunity. It also represents distraction. And I see so many leaders chasing some of those things that they're just too hard to execute, or they're not executing it in the right way. And when you think of technology, it's changed so much over 20 years. You know, think of cell phones 20 years ago. By the way, Jerry, did you ever have one of these?
Yes, I did. I hate to admit that, but I did. I guess it goes with being old enough to be thought of in a legendary sense.
Well, hey, I had one too, you know. I mean, so.
I feel better now. I feel better.
Yeah, I really did. And you know, that technology has come a long way. You know, think about what we can get now for $100 a month and $100, you know, deposit. You can get an iPhone, and you know, that old technology, it's old. And when you think of computers, you know, I mean, you know, the old school computer, the new school computer. And by the way, I was happy to hear that you're on an Apple, Jerry. Congrats on that. Yeah, I was really happy to hear that.
Yeah, good.
How long have you been on an Apple, by the way?
You know, I think I bought the Apple 5 years ago, and now I've got 2 of these laptops, a desktop, iPad, and an iPhone. And if I could only figure out how to connect them all and get my passwords all the same, I'd be in good shape. I'm going to have to see your technology guy to figure that out.
Yeah, let us know. We'll be happy to help you. But nevertheless, a lot has changed. And again, this is 20 years. It's not 50 years. It's just, the past 10 years, the past 20 years. But one thing has not changed within a lot of companies. Again, I'm going to share some perspective here in a minute, tactically, how I think things should change and what I recommend to companies. But, this is how most companies execute the WOW platform, is the loan officers are in charge of the execution to the left, and the corporate is all about back-end and loyalty. When in fact that rate quote is a real magical moment. That rate quote is so important for a couple of reasons. One, someone wins, and actually there's not usually one loser. There's multiple lenders and loan officers that lost a loan, but there's only one that wins a loan. And then two, I think one of the things that we really forget in our industry, especially in today's marketplace with great technology, is if you deliver a great experience, customers tell each other. And it can be multiples like never before. So word of mouth is more powerful than ever. So how you execute at that rate quote and the experience that you deliver from a service execution standpoint, it makes a difference like never before. So again, one quick survey question I want to ask everybody is, do you let your loan officers make that decision? So real quick, again, I'm not going to make you get to 70%, but I do want to get a feedback from the audience. Does your loan officer decide how they do the rate quote, or do you as a company have tools, technology, solutions? Obviously, if you're Mortgage Coach clients, you have some, but how are you executing right now? And again, let's at least get over 50% here, guys. Jerry wants 100%. I'll be happy with 50.
Okay.
All right. So thanks. We got a nice push there. So I'm going to keep going with the presentation because I really wanted to get into Q&A. But let me just walk you through from a Mortgage Coach perspective what the difference between average and great is, and then we'll get into the Q&A. But this is average execution. If you leave it to your loan officers, they're either going to be doing something like this or something that looks like just a basic rate quote. But this is what a great experience looks like in the rate quote process. It's got branding that steps out. It's got compliance that's all taken care of by corporate. It's got the basic rate quote, because you need to have the basic rate quote, but you also need to be able to drill down into the details. And again, using new technology, it's easier now than it's ever been to really create an online experience and an offline experience that isn't overwhelming, but it's powerful. Again, being able to drill down on the prepayment. Again, these reports, you can email it to your client, and when your client opens it up and reads it, you're able to get an alert to know that they're doing that. So again, really quick, I wanted to go over what the difference between a very average execution at the rate quote was and an exceptional execution, and really put a thought out there to key executives to consider as a corporation, really putting some investment and some leadership into how you're executing that rate quote. It's a key touch point in the process, and how you're executing really does make a difference. So one more question. Is it starting to make some sense, that you would put some thought into the execution of using technology to improve that experience? Does that make sense to anybody out there? So again, we are at 20%. And again, Jerry, you've seen this presentation before. I'm pretty much done. What are your thoughts on, having an organization care about that rate quote? Because that's not traditional thinking. That is a new thought.
I think it's very important, and I think that I've had a chance to, be on your system and see how it's used and talk to people about Edge and so forth. And I just think that it's a wonderful tool for originators to use, and originators need to use it fully. Take advantage of it. It's a good differentiator. I think you guys have come up with some good stuff that you keep improving. So it's, to me, it's something that every company should be embracing.
Well, thank you. So, just to wrap it up, the last quote I have is my quote, and that is, stop selling loans, start delivering a wow experience at that point of sale. And any executives on the call right now, if you would like to reach out to me and talk about the wow platform, just email me at Dave@Mortgage Coach. Real simple. That's, my number one goal is talking to large organizations, helping them, prioritize and figure out how to improve service execution within the WOW platform. So again, Dave@Mortgage Coach. So to get your questions out there, again, we have a number of questions where people posted them. I would really prefer to unmute people and have you raise your hand and bring you into the conversation. So Q&A, we have a question here. I'm having a hard time pronouncing your first name. Dio, you have been unmuted. Dio Amend. Okay. I'm going to remute you. Amber, you had a question or a comment? Go ahead, Amber. Hey, Jerry, are you hearing me still?
I hear you, but I hear no question.
I hate when that happens. So I have
unmuted
Amber. Amber, one more chance. You may have it on your own mute on your end, but I have unmuted you to come into the conversation. Did you have a question? All right, Amber, I'm going to lower your hand. If you want to raise your hand, feel free. Deborah, Kathy, there's a number of folks here. Let me see here. I'll go ahead until we get some raised hands and try to bring in a few questions. So how will the elections this fall in our industry affect our industry?
There's a big question, isn't it? There's a good question. To me, government moves awfully slowly. We need to be prepared for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We need to be prepared for agencies, GSEs, to make it more difficult, more overlays or guidelines or restrictions on the loans that they buy. We just need to make sure we keep doing things as right as we can, irrespective of the election. And I'm anxious for November to come, and we can all at least begin to think about which course the country might take, but I'm not smart enough to know.
All right. What are your thoughts on over-regulation impacting wholesale broker originator business?
Well, I think everybody is faced with a certain amount of over-regulation. I think whether you're a broker or a mortgage banker, you need to do things right, from beginning to end. And if you do things right, beginning to end, there is somebody that wants to take those loans, buy those loans. So I would just be as focused as possible on doing everything tight and right, and always do the right thing with your customers. I think you'll be successful. I just believe that'll is how it will work out. If you make mistakes, you're going to suffer the consequences, I think, particularly with all the oversight.
Great. So, by the way, I had a number of people ask questions about recording and the PowerPoint. We are recording this. We'll post a link to our Facebook page, and I'll also include a copy of the presentation. So that was a question out there. Do you think we'll ever repeal Dodd-Frank?
You know, there has been so much discussion about Dodd-Frank. It is not the best legislation written. It should, in many respects, repealed. I have my suspicion is that once you get by the election and who's ever elected, cooler heads will prevail, and aspects of the Dodd-Frank enactment certainly may go away or be amended. And I think Congress will act in that regard. But I wouldn't believe that so strongly that you don't diligently work at doing everything you can to comply with your regulator. And if you're a mortgage bank, it's going to be the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and making sure that you're doing, you know, fair lending is important. No discriminatory behavior or action is important. Those things are going to prevail whether the act the law gets changed or not, or amended or not. So I would just keep that in mind.
Okay. And what's your take about the yield curve and the interest rate environment? And what's your crystal ball telling you about Europe's debt crisis and how it will impact our market?
It reminds me of once trying to give a speech on the state of the California economy when I worked for Ronald Reagan, and I really screwed that up, and so I have a chance to screw this up. But you know, sure, Europe is going to have an impact. I believe that our interest rates are going to stay relatively low for a relatively long period of time. To me, the bigger issue, or the bigger thought here, is with Basel III and banks and how much MSRs they can have on their books, or servicing rights they can have on their books. I just believe that mortgage companies have an opportunity to have good margins if they do loans right for a long period of time. And so I'm very bullish and optimistic about the mortgage business in the short run and the long run.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. Not that the other ones weren't. Cyrus, thank you for posting so many good questions, by the way. Appreciate you being an active member. But here's I think a producing branch manager asking this question. I was told recently by a recruiter that there's more of a need to stay in the origination game as a manager than there has in the past. Do you agree with that in this market?
Well, I'm not sure what the motivation of the recruiter was, and I hear a lot that, you know, companies want their branch managers to manage and not originate. But I understand why they originate, because you control that. But I do think that what branch managers need to get better at is coaching up those originators on their team that are lower producing, have business plans, have regular meetings with them, manage those people up. You can build teams that are bigger and still originate. I like being actually originating to some extent because it keeps you in the game. You understand what the issues are. But it's also difficult to do that and manage others. So you have to become better at doing that. But all the companies I work with are going to give me a call here. But you know, don't get out of originating business until you've learned how to manage your people and you can build a powerful team, a more powerful team.
Right on. Good advice. By the way, I just had one of the industry's top recruiters, Steve Rainey, weigh in, and he said it depends on the size of the branch volume. Non-producing managers with low volumes don't make money. So there you have it.
There you go. I believe that to be true. I mean, you need to have, you need to watch your expenses. You need to have metrics. How many loans per processor? How many loans per originator are your standards? How do you get people to continue to improve? And, you know, I just think that every day you go to work, you need to figure out how can I be better and how can I help my team be better.
And that goes for how do I originate more loans, how do I make the process better, how do I wow my customer better, all of that stuff. And if you do that, you're going to be someone that is a successful business leader in whatever environment you're in.
There you have it, guys. So, Jerry, this has been a fabulous call. You know, again, in preparing for it, my biggest takeaway was clarity, how important it is to have, you know, your clarity about what you want to accomplish as a leader, how important it is to communicate that regularly. I still think that's probably a big takeaway. I don't see that we have any other questions, so I'm going to leave it to you for some parting thoughts. You know, what would you like to tell the audience as we wrap up today's call?
But Dave, I think our time is short because we're probably a little over what you had expected. I would just say, one, it's certainly an honor to be with you. I think highly of your organization, Dave, and so I just appreciate it. I love the mortgage business. If there is anything I can do for any of your customers on the call, don't hesitate to reach out to me at Building Champions or through LinkedIn. I'd be happy to certainly help you in any way possible as time permits. So all the best. Enjoy all the opportunities that are now and will continue in this wonderful business. We have an opportunity to participate in the mortgage business.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. Again, there will be a number of links put on the Mortgage Coach Facebook page, a link to Jerry's blog. Jerry, what is your most recent blog post? Just to give us a little taste of what we might be missing and a reason to go read it.
Well, you know, there's one that posted today, and, you know, it's basically, you know, this is your moment. And one of our coaches, James Allison, gives a story about his best moment in sports. And I happen to give what was my lowest moment in sports. But we all every day have moments of opportunity, and we need to take advantage of it. And we can't be timid about it. And so keep your eyes open for those moments of opportunity and go to Leadership from the Trenches and see what you think, and I certainly love your feedback.
All right. Well, again, from my perspective, this has been a great call. I love our relationship with Building Champions, and I love the growing relationship and friendship that we have, Jerry. Thank you for making time to prepare for today's call, and thank you for putting out an hour to share value to the Mortgage Coach community. I'm grateful. Thank you.
My pleasure, and have a great day, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye now.